Welcome to another episode of Nuggets with Sauce, the podcast dishing up bite-sized insights you can sink your teeth into, served with a saucy take on common leadership challenges by your host, Michelle Lawrence. Well, here we are again. I'm so excited with another episode of Nuggets with Sauce. I am hungry to dig in with my guest today, Tami Palmer. Tami, I am so excited that you are joining me today. We were just talking before we started recording about how we both love to improvise, and there's nothing we love more on Nuggets with Sauce than some good organic nuggets that just come out of an improvised, unscripted conversation, which is what we're doing in every one of these episodes. So Tami, as you know, as with all my episodes, I love to ask my guests to introduce themselves without using the job title that you got or use for yourself, but just kind of share with our watching and listening.
Yeah.
What magic mojo are you bringing to the world and helping people with every day? What's firing you up?
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. And I'm excited to be here. So thanks for inviting me onto your show. I am all about helping people make intentional career decisions. That's what my mission is. I am really attuned to the fact that we go through life just sort of following shiny objects or not really thinking about things. Or somebody described themselves yesterday as an opportunist, that he just took an opportunity and took an opportunity. And then at some point we get to a place where we're like, oh, what path am I on? Am I even on a path? Is this the path I want to be on? So I help people kind of right side that and figure out, where do they want to be? Is there some connection to a North Star purpose? And how is their career an expression of that? So that's the high level stuff. But then I can get into the weeds, help with resumes, interview prep, all the tactical stuff of getting a job search.
Right.
So it's one of the many things I do.
And we need that these days. And there's nuggets to unpack right there. But just before we dive in and really sink our teeth into some of this, do you have a recommended read, watch, or listen for our audience?
Well, in fact, I do. Because I'm always reading, I'm always listening, I'm usually watching. But I actually woke up super early this morning so I could finish this dang book that I'm so engrossed in. And my daughter laughed at me, seeing me at 6 a.m, like in my book. And I'm still in the fog. Do you get that way with books where you're kind of in that world for a while afterwards? So I just finished the epic novel Hello Beautiful by Anna Napolitano, I think is how you say her last name. It's a modern take on Little Women.
Oh.
Set from the 70s up till 2008, tracking the lives of these sisters and their relationships. Superb.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And I always say, look, it doesn't have to be business related. We all need a break. And sometimes I love what, sometimes let's get a little brain fog in that respect. And, we want a good relief from the everyday. So thank you very much for recommending that. That sounds very intriguing. Always love something like that. So let's dive into our nuggets today. And I love something that you said very early on in introducing yourself, which I think is super important. And I know we're going to, dip into a few different sauces around this. But when you spoke about purpose, people, having that purpose, and I think when we look at what's going on in the work world today, and you and I think we're also going to go down that rabbit hole around, there's layoffs and all these things going on that are really having a negative impact on folks. But it's kind of a double-edged sword here. And I want to hear what your thoughts are on this. But on the one hand, I feel like as individuals, a lot of us don't have enough of our own sense of purpose. So like you were saying, like that one guy's kind of like, I went over here and then I went over there and I don't really know why I'm doing it. Something I stumbled across it. Which might work and might not. But, people want to have that sense of purpose when they come to work, that connectivity thing. And then the flip side of that coin is, where's the purposeful thinking on behalf of the leaders of companies hiring these people? Which nugget do you want to dunk in sauce first? And how hot is that sauce, my friend?
Well, it's probably easier to fix ourselves than to fix the leaders.
You're a leader, you should fix yourself, dag.
Right. We need to know that our work matters.
Yeah.
Right? That there's some reason for what we're doing, that it's helping somebody, and when we're disconnected from that, then we're floundering. And the more purpose you can bring to your work, the more fulfilled you're going to be. I just had this conversation with my 14-year-old who's starting to think about where she wants to go in the world.
Never too early.
I told her, if the clients that are happiest are the ones that have some kind of sense of giving back and furthering and bettering the world through the work they do. And it can look like a lot of different things.
Wait, stop. Just please stop. What is this craziness you're dishing? You mean it's not a paycheck? You're not going to show us the money, Tami? Come on.
Well, they can go hand in hand, but that's where the disconnect happens, right? And so I think, not that you and I are going to fix the capitalism of our modern day corporate America structure.
Not until I figure out where I accidentally tucked away my magic wand. So can't find it.
If you can find that, that would be really helpful.
I'm going Hogwarts all over this. Yes. But in the meantime, we'll be near.
We're attached to
right
the stock price and the stakeholders and the board share, and all of that is driving decisions.
Here's the money,
right? It's a money problem.
Yeah. Which is a people problem. I'm arguing more and more lately. These are all business problems are people problems, because people decided that the money that goes to the stakeholders, the stockholders, the shareholders, and the board is more important than what happens to the people who are actually driving that growth and profitability.
Right.
Kind of where my
so until we can figure out, hey, this isn't actually serving us as a culture, we're going to continue to see layoffs. We're going to continue to see managers making decisions that harm others that they may not even want to be making, but feel like they're forced to make.
Yeah, right. And it starts at the top and it rolls downhill, and, but what decisions are being made, when you talk about culture, and, there's all kinds of layers of culture. What's your company culture? What's your team culture? And again, how does anybody feel? Do they feel the sense of purpose or alignment to what your company exists for, or what your team or department exists for within that realm? Because when people feel, I'm sure you're talking to people all the time too, that are like, look, I don't get it. Like, I'm just like a worker bee here in the hive. Nobody notices me. Actually, we do, especially when you either aren't around, aren't getting it done, or get it wrong.
Sure.
Which isn't necessarily your fault, because somebody didn't set you up for success.
But then we don't notice you when you're doing your work well.
Right. And then we're not appreciated, which is another reason, if you're not getting rid of them, they're finding their own exit point, right? But that sense of purpose, like, why should I get out of bed every day? Like, do people really want this? Like, and I hope everybody caught my tone. I was being very sarcastic when I said, oh, is it really, like, isn't it about the money? I think so many leaders just think you just chuck dollars at something and that's going to fix it.
Throw a foosball table and some free beer and they'll be happy.
Pretty up the break room. I always say this is like, people mistake morale for culture. They're not the same thing. Morale is to culture what tacos are to Mexico.
Okay. Yeah.
Not the same thing. Not this, you're not going to get the results that you want. And so how do we help people, for those who are listening, how do we first and foremost help individuals? Because again, we undoubtedly have some business leaders who are tuning into this and going, I can't maybe fix everybody in my organization right out of the gate, but even for them to be able to look at themselves and say, where's your sense of purpose at? How do we dig into that and help them feel and get more purposeful and more aligned in their purpose with what they're doing in their business?
Well, there's a lot in there, and it's a hard thing to answer.
Yeah. And we've got, we've got a limited amount of time, but
yeah,
a tip or two. I don't know.
I think it's simple, by starting with asking people their opinion, asking people to contribute ideas, asking people to be part of the solution to things.
Curiosity, you mean?
That's a great place to start.
Openness.
Transparency.
Yeah. Vulnerability, maybe a little bit. Like, hey, I don't have all
Yeah,
the answers. How about you?
right, right.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, those are great places to start.
Yeah. So when you're working with somebody who's like, I'm trying to find my purpose and or I'm trying to figure this out. What kinds of things, are you I mean, we can ask other people those questions as a leader. What if I'm the leader myself and I'm questioning my sense of purpose and my alignment?
Yeah, then we have to get at the heart of what motivates you. What are the what are the patterns and threads in your life that have, like, the concept of flow? It's
Yeah.
like, when are you in flow?
Yeah.
When do those experiences happen? What are you doing in those, and how do you get more of those?
Right.
I think it's also taking a look at strengths finders. It's looking at what lit you up when you were a kid.
Right. I want to just back up for a quick sec, just in case anybody who's tuning into this isn't quite sure what we mean by flow. Can we qualify?
Hmm.
I mean, I understand flow, you understand flow, but just in case
Yeah,
anybody's
I
wondering,
can never pronounce the guy's last name. Can you?
no,
No,
that's not
Mikhail, and then it's like CZ something 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 with like 16 letters.
just
Um,
flow state or being in flow. And
yeah, but Google Mikhail and flow,
yeah,
and he's a European. I don't even know. I shouldn't be talking about this. I don't know who the dude is.
we're just going to
He's
say he's a
brilliant.
smart dude.
He's a smart dude who came up with this concept or identified this state of when you're in the zone, when you're doing work and you're so enthralled in what you're doing that you forget about time. Creativity is often surging, ideas are flowing, everything feels easy, and there's there's an energetic resonance
Mhm.
that what the work you're doing is what you should be doing. And you're like grooving literally on the energy of
Yeah.
what you're doing, right? We've been that, maybe it's you get lost in writing or painting,
Mhm.
or you're doing project management and you're just so in the flow and you're coming up with all the programs, like whatever it is. We've all had those states,
Yeah.
but they're like these little gems that we are like, oh, that was like a nice thing, but like, how do we cultivate more of that?
Right. And I like how you touched on the idea that it doesn't necessarily have to be, and I'm using my air quotes here for anybody who's listening, it doesn't have to be at work. Like I know for myself, I often get great flow state when I'm gardening or I'm
Yep.
out in nature. I often get great flow state when I'm in the swimming pool.
Hmm.
There's different ways of getting into that. There's definitely flow states that I have in my work as well, particularly when I'm digging in and doing something as a creative solution to something. Like for me, creativity is one of my top values. But think about that in terms of, you don't have to look at it just from the work perspective. You can get flow anywhere. But I love what you're saying about identify, like, where do you light up? Where do you feel passionate? And, purpose can be driven from that, right?
Hmm.
And that idea of start thinking about, I loved what you're saying. Where are the patterns? If you look back over things or you think about, and we could thread a million needles here or dunk a million nuggets here in different sauces, but it's like, what lights you up at your work and you want more of that. And then you think about what is sucking the bandwidth out of you and your soul sucking stuff that you have to do at work that you'd rather
Right.
not do if you could get it off your plate. How do you get more of the flow and the stuff because we all have that, right? There's a reason I didn't go into medicine or mathematics.
Right. Exactly.
The whole world can thank me for that.
Right
Yeah,
there
I
with.
love that. I love that. So thinking about
Yeah.
what you're saying, I love that. Think for yourself, you know, where do you get those times where you just love what you're doing and it feels like time stands still and it doesn't even feel like work?
Hmm.
And look at
Exactly.
those patterns. I like that. Look at those patterns of where were there, and these days we have multiple careers and multiple jobs. Where were the times and places where you're at now or in prior experiences? Like, where did it really feel good? And what was going on? What was the environment? Yeah. What else? What else can we share with folks?
Oh gosh. Well, shall we segue over to the broader topic of layoffs that we were chatting about earlier?
We certainly can, because, here, if there's anything that's going to kill your flow, it's going to be Yeah, and I was saying too, like, and it's interesting, but I think it's very important that this is not the first and it's not going to be the last episode of Nuggets that layoffs is coming into the mix. And so I think we should dive into that because let's unpack a few things here. Like, I want to also see if we can dig into what happens to the people left behind after the layoff has happened. Where's, their sense of purpose, as well as what's the impact on the people that you just said sucks to be you, see ya. So
Yeah.
what are you seeing in that space? Because you're working with folks who are on the receiving end of
Right.
those layoffs and the impact that it's.
Well, and let's talk on a broader scale of what we're doing as a society.
Mhm.
Like we're all looking at these individual, like, oh, this company laid off. Oh, this person's been impacted. Like they're all these isolated things.
But they
And
add up.
now it's happening so much all the time that the majority of people that you're bringing into your organization at one time or another have been let go,
Yep.
probably in a traumatic way.
Yep. Like
And you're
an email
asking
or
them,
a really bad Zoom call from like, oh, I get everybody on Zoom for a town hall, and then I tell a pile of people, half of you don't have a job starting today. Thanks a lot. That's traumatic.
or people that walk into their office, go to swipe in, and their card has been turned off.
Yeah. Yep.
Go to log into your computer, you can't access. Oh, did we not tell you?
Oh, did you miss that memo? Yeah. Yeah, that's trauma. That's a shocker.
Right? And so, and yet when we hire and we onboard people, it's, trust us, give us all of your time, give us all of your creativity, give us all your juice.
We love you if we're even onboarding you. But yeah, there's
Right.
a whole love fest up at the front end, or there's.
Right? And then it's like, but one day this could all disappear and you don't know when that's going to be.
And it's a bad breakup.
Right. And it's a little bit of a ticking time bomb out there, right? I have a client at a Fortune 100 company and she's like, oh, yep, the quarterly layoffs are due any day and I may or may not be on the list. And I'm like, how do you wake up every morning and go to work and give 110% knowing that that could be the week you're told you're done?
Yeah. There's that psychological safety thing. This is
Yes.
real.
Yes.
Let's talk about safety in the workplace. And if we want to, invoke Maslow and his hierarchy of needs, and I do use that in certain things when I'm, training managers on what to do and what not to do. But it's a
Yeah.
good model to think of, because if all my mental energy and my bandwidth is being sucked by worrying about, am I on the chopping block? What's going to happen? Is it me? Is it somebody else? What's this going to do to me? Do you really think that I'm going to be a fully engaged and fully actualized human being who's going to be a rock star performer in your company? Hell no. I'm too
I don't
busy.
even know if you're getting rock stars anymore because anyone that has any ounce of smarts
Yeah.
isn't fully opening the way they would had they not been through all these traumas. Because some of these clients that I've seen, they've been laid off 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
This isn't like a one-time thing.
Yeah. How
I
many,
don't know how they get the confidence to go back out there.
right. How many times do you need to be slapped down before you just stop putting your neck
Yeah.
out there in the first place?
Well, and I have an interesting personal share in that.
Please.
So I started talking about this topic a lot last fall,
Mhm.
and I ended up writing a blog about it. And in writing the blog, I told my own layoff story that happened to me in 2007.
Okay.
I started crying. I have not fully processed that layoff,
Mhm.
even though I've had a very successful career after that. I've done amazing things, or I'm completely happy where I'm at now. There was stuff unresolved that I wasn't even aware of still lingering inside me from something, almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And so I'm one.
Mm-hmm.
How many of us are out there?
Yeah.
And some of these people, like I said, they don't have a one story, they have multiples.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is a very particular type of grief. This is loss, this is grief, and most of us don't see it that way. So,
Not socially acceptable to say I'm in a grief cycle because of a layoff. They'd be like, suck it up, dude. Get your resume ready, get out there, start interviewing.
hurry up, get
All
back.
right, hurry up, you're gonna miss out on things. Oh, and
You can't stop that treadmill.
right, your severance and your unemployment's got a timeline.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So it's again, I don't know that we have the magical answer, but I do think this is on the leaders
Yeah.
of the companies to put a lot more intention and thought into the hiring process. And
Oh, yes.
like, what's ours to own? Any company laying off 1,600 people, I believe, did not make sensible hiring choices on the front end. So I think when we hire somebody, we should say, what is our game plan if the economy turns and we don't need this person? Can we utilize them somewhere else? Do we start hiring people that can do two jobs
Mhm.
and say, you're hired for this? If things go bad, we're going to stick you over here.
Yeah.
I was the company recruiter for a tech firm from 2000 to 2007. In that was 9/11. And that was the economy dip that happened in there. We weren't doing a ton of hiring. I was terrified. I'm like, I'm going to get laid off. Why would they need a recruiter? And my HR person said, well, recruiting isn't the only thing you can do. I got a lot of projects for you. I need your help. You're sticking around. That's not normally the way it's handled.
Not at all. No. And again, going back to what you're saying earlier, the idea of having curiosity, ask around. Hey, leaders, why don't you get your leaders or, make it part of your culture to say, we have conversations around what are you doing right now? What are you interested in doing? How could we help you become more multifunctional? Are you maybe interested in doing something or capable? I always talk about that head, heart, and briefcase that come to work every day. If you're an EOS person, you understand this is, get it, want it, and capacity. However you want to shake that out. But do you really know? You don't even know what people want. You haven't asked them if they're willing to, would
Right,
people be willing to take a job share if they had to and say, look, I'd rather have part-time hours and part-time pay than zero,
right, right.
you know?
Exactly.
Uh,
Yeah, I had a situation when I was in corporate where we had a customer service engineer who was very curious about sales. He really wanted to try sales. So we moved him into inside sales and he didn't flourish. It was hard. He didn't hit numbers. It wasn't his thing. And I found out after the fact that they had let him go. And I went marching into my manager's office and I said, do you realize I have a job, his old job in the department open. I've been trying to fill. Did anyone ask him if he wanted to go back? No. You know what I did? I called him and I rehired him.
I hope you rehired him at a higher rate too, just to
I don't remember.
But that, and actually that's a very interesting thing because that has been a phenomenon in the last few years, what we're calling boomerang. I've seen that happen too, where people kind of boomerang, they left and then they came back for whatever reason. And I'm like,
Sure.
it's possible, but there's also thinking about when we talk about those losses, there's not only, you're losing all that talent, you're losing all that knowledge, you're losing money. I mean, it is expensive, and what are you going to do?
Oh, the
If
cost to hire is to backfill someone is huge.
ridiculous. And
Yeah.
it's like, you know, you're blowing money out the door like crazy. I just don't think business leaders really understand the true underpinning of this either. But there's so many costs, financial and otherwise, associated with this. It makes everybody's job that much harder. What happens if you turn around and change your mind in a few months? Do you think that person is going to want to come back to you?
Well, normally they don't go back to those people. They just start fresh.
Right.
So we're just losing, there's just this.
They're never going to be your ambassador. They're never going to be, the trust is eroded there. And meanwhile, anybody who wasn't cut out of the equation and is left behind is left holding the bag, picking up the slack. And they, to your point, are also traumatized.
Well, and they, maybe some of your top performers, because that's why you decided to keep them, they're scared. They're going to start interviewing. They're going to start looking. You're probably going to lose some of them just because they don't feel safe anymore.
Right.
They don't feel valued.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Or they're just exhausted and wrung out because now they've been left pulling the slack because, you said we don't need this many people around here. You got, do more with
Yeah.
less, do more with less. I mean, we're seeing this in the spaces of like, look at some of the retailers who are, screaming their heads off about, theft and losses and what's that costing them. You know what? In part, why? Because you don't have enough bodies on the floor. We
Right.
decided
Right.
that, we're gonna cut staffing to the bone. There's nobody
Right.
around to get, like
Yeah.
I'm picking on one industry, but you could pick any of them. It's like there's
No,
not
you're right.
around to
Go
help.
into a Staples, a Best Buy, name your box store, and
Sucks.
try and find somebody to ask a question.
Right, shopping sucks. I mean, so what do we
You
do?
know?
Lock everything up. I'm gonna lock up all the, well, then I may as well just sit at home and buy all my stuff online from a company named after a rainforest that is being ripped out to make the products that we sell at the company that's called the rainforest. The point is, it's just like it's a spiral, right? That's the other thing I don't think our leaders are understanding is you can create kind of a rotten spiral around this that really gets hard to get out of, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I
And the
don't,
leaders themselves aren't immune.
right. And yeah, and how happy are you as a leader leading these miserable, unhappy, stressed out, unsafe people who are, and again, this is hitting our engagement, and engagement is directly correlated to productivity and output. Hence, we have quiet quitting. Why should I give you more than what are you giving me in return that would make it worth my while to, go engagement is, truly engaged employees are considered those who are willing to, give a discretionary effort, an extra discretionary effort above and a little above and beyond. A highly engaged person wants to give it their all.
Right.
Why do we have engagement? I mean, what is it? I think worldwide, it's not just even here in America, but I think Gallup's recent number was worldwide. It was some staggering amount. It's over 70% of people, or very close to it, is like totally, they're not engaged.
They're not engaged because they don't have trust. It's
Right.
not a safe place, and they don't have purpose.
Yeah, I
If you
don't know why.
have trust and purpose, there's no reason not to be engaged.
Right. I'm not just a paycheck and I'm not just a bee in the hive. Right? Back to that purpose. Are we connecting people? And I always look at it this way too. It can be as simple as mission, vision, values, right? Do I align? Do I understand how when I come to work, help fulfill the mission of this company? A, do I even know what it is? Pop quiz everybody and see what.
Yeah, I have a hard time with that stuff because I think most mission statements, vision statements, all that are just these pretty things that marketing makes, and they get hung up in the walls, and it doesn't. There's
Well,
there's no real core resonance to it.
that's a cultural disconnect though, because I look at it and I don't disagree. It's because it's hollow, because we have aspirational things that we say, but then when we look at what other elements of our culture are coming together, so we're aspirational. This is what we say about ourselves. Then we have our actions. Do we actually do what we say about ourselves? Do we have the artifacts that prove what we, how do you show this, whether it's your branding or, whatever. And then we make assumptions. So we slap this sucker up on the wall if we can be bothered to, and then we don't act on it. So we're hypocrites, right? Which, like, oh, our people are our greatest asset while the break room is falling apart. And I actually
The
literally,
ones we haven't laid off.
right. And yeah, our people are our greatest asset, but we're going to treat you like crap, lay people off because we weren't thinking long-term or broader or smarter in the first place. We punish you. And then the assumptions that we're going to make behind all this, well, clearly you understand why we did this. And you must understand why we do things the way that we do. It's just part of the system, right? And around we go. Yeah, but when I don't feel connected to those, or, when people see those disconnects, they act accordingly. It's like anybody who's a parent understands this. Do as I say, not as I do. Get the results.
Yep, yep. Yeah, so how are we going to fix all this, Michelle?
Oh gosh, how are we going to fix all this? Well, I mean,
We just keep bringing awareness to it, shedding light on it, talking about it.
I think it's, doing what we're doing, trying to grab the attention and say, look, back to that, nugget that we were sharing earlier that, okay, if this is really about money, if money is your language, if that's what you speak, then start looking at what is it costing you. What is it
Right.
truly costing you
Right.
to don't look at it from what the shareholders are getting or anything, but really dig in and go, like, run the numbers. What is it really costing you to not have a workforce that can fire on all cylinders because they don't have the trust, they don't have the psychological safety, they don't have that sense of purpose and connectivity and alignment. You can call that quiet quitting, you can call that disengagement, you can call it whatever you want, but the body's in the building, but they're not entirely there. Start with some of those numbers. Start with those numbers of what does it cost? I mean, I read something recently, like the amount of the millions and millions of dollars that it costs a company to lay people off as well. By the time you package them out, if you have to package them, I mean, really?
All the outplacement companies that you're paying, all the.
Like, is it?
So what if we put laws in place that gave steep penalties and we got back to the notion of contracts, employment contracts? How would companies look at hiring differently?
You crazy communist. How dare you?
But the
That is,
unchecked
yeah,
free-for-all
yeah,
is the shit show we're living right now.
right. Well, and kind of in line with that, not entirely, but you know, anybody who's like in the space of going, they're I hate unions. Union, oh my God, the last thing on earth we want in here is a union. Okay, go ahead and ask yourself why people unionize in the first place.
Right.
If you were doing right by people, they would never, you know, they wouldn't feel that they need to band together to do those kinds of things. The reason people want to unionize is because they have no other way of getting what they want and need. They need a collective voice. So, you know, in those spaces, and yeah, it's very different in other countries and in Europe, you know, and I get to some degree that it can be a bit of a double-edged sword. I've lived in union and non-union environments throughout my career. The hard part sometimes about union environments is it can be very difficult to get somebody who's not a great performer out as much as it protects good people, you know, so you do have to be careful about that. But yeah, I'd love to see that change. Good luck, given Congress can't
You
even.
just need different stakes, right?
Right.
Right. If the stakes, well, it's kind of like that.
Yeah.
The C-suite gets that, right?
Yeah.
Right. You can't just willy-nilly fire a CEO without having a huge financial penalty to it.
Exactly. And I
Right.
think as consumers, if government's not going to do it, we can vote with our wallets. It's not the best help, but it's at least something. Or get a hold of your
Yeah,
representative.
but that doesn't, I mean, that's like a nice, I mean, that's a nice idea,
Mhm.
but the amount of organization that would be required to stop funding a company, like it's a hard thing to actually have it really make an impact.
Sure. So we're back to laws. How do we get them to pass those laws, knowing what our government's like these days?
Well, it's kind of like a kid. You can be like, all right, there's no rules. Here's life, right? And then you see where they're taking advantage of it. Then you're like, well, guess what? We got some rules because you were too freewheeling on your own. And now we've got to put structure and boundaries.
Yeah.
I think there needs to be some big change.
Yeah.
Because companies are going to push and push and push and get away with whatever they can get away with. And our culture, our society is suffering.
Yes.
I mean, talk to a teenager about, hey, are you excited to go work in corporate America? You know, they're like, hell no.
No, because they've watched their elders suffer through it and they're not going to make those mistakes.
Yes. They see their dad unemployed for 8 months.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. 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 They see the Gen Zs are watching their older millennial siblings, busting a gut. And for what?
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe they're the ones that'll change it. I don't know.
I'm hopeful.
Me too.
I want us to end on a positive. I mean, I think there is always hope. There's always room for improvement. There's always opportunity to do it differently and better. I think it does come down to the willpower of people in this space to stand up and say, I'm not taking this. This is crap. I think our Gen Zs to a good degree are starting to do that as they're coming into our work world now. And they're just saying like, I
Yep.
don't have to do this and I don't have to take this and it does, whatever worked for you guys isn't going to work for me. And I think it is refreshing and interesting to see how they are, shifting that dynamic. And we're just on the front end of that group coming in.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's early days with them.
Right. It'll be really interesting to see what all this looks like
Yeah, give it
20 years
another
from now.
5, 6 years and see where.
Yeah.
And by the way, we're already right on the cusp, at least in the United States, where you and I are at. We're right on the cusp of having, the majority of people who are working in this country today are millennials and Gen Zs. The old guard is,
Right. Right. Gen X are becoming almost, we're
well,
in retirement, close to retirement.
Gen X was small to begin with. The boomers are starting to move out, so there's this
Yeah.
whole groundswell of a very youthful group of people
Yes.
coming in. So
Yeah.
I want us to leave on this high note of saying like, hey, I think we've covered a lot. This is not going to be the one and only time you're coming in here and we're talking about this. These are nuggets and we're going to have a buffet of nuggets over time. But I love in this space what we've covered here, because I think you brought a really good menu of thought-provoking things for us to be thinking about in the space of like, hey, if you are not, as a leader who's watching or listening to this, if you are not thinking about what your decisions today are going to do to people tomorrow, if you're not thinking broader and more long-term, if you're not putting your people first, if you're not creating those places of safety and purpose and alignment between those things, you're never going to get the business that you really, really want. And by the way, that will hit your shareholders and your board members and your bank account too.
We
So
just have to connect those dots.
right. It's in your best interest to start thinking about, there is no business without your people. So
Yes.
start thinking about how you do some things better in the space
Yeah.
of people, and we will move mountains. Thank you so much, Tami, for being with me today. We're going to do this again soon. Thanks everybody for being and great audience with us today on Nuggets with Sauce, and we'll see you in another episode soon. Thanks for joining this episode of Nuggets with Sauce. I hope we fed your appetite for insights and information on how to improve your business. Be sure to like and subscribe so you never go hungry for more thought leadership.